Hi, a very good afternoon and a warm welcome from all of us at MRSI. Just to kick the today's webinar off, the Market Research Society, to introduce MRSI to all of us. MRSI is a not-for-profit association of providers and buyers of research and insights. The core purpose of MRSI is to create awareness of our industry, establish and promote professional standards, and also to provide a platform for market research professionals, not just to engage, but also to showcase work and to collaborate.
Sandeep, you helping us with the slides?
Yeah.
The next slide, Sandeep.
Next slide, please, Sandeep. Greetings from I, Sundaran Ashwini, your host for MRSI's special webinar series focusing on the impact of COVID-19 and how our industry is addressing these challenges head on. A few housekeeping announcements. This session is being recorded and MRSI members can access the content from the MRSI's website in case some people have missed it. Participants may also raise their questions at any time using the question tab on their windows. And we will have our panelists respond to those questions at the end of the session in our Q&A. Next slide, please, Sandeep. So far, we've had a set in the special series. The first special webinar series was focused on India at a time of COVID-19. The second webinar, the recent community despite the limitations that was focused on research community and how to kind of deliver the insight in
Sundar, we are unable to hear you clearly.
Ashwini, hear me? Just checking because it seems to be a lag.
Yeah, I think you may need to switch off your video.
Oh, let me do that. Sorry about all the glitches. Yeah, so Sandeep, if you could go to the next slide. Sorry, my system's frozen up. Just give me one moment again. Ashwini, do you want to kind of take over because my system has gone into freeze?
Sure. So just taking it over from here. So today's session is a pretty unique session. It is an inspirational, future-focused, and we have future-focused keynotes from high-profile voices. It's not a webinar. It has a live insight event. It is an event wherein both clients and agencies discuss real-time problem faced during these trying times and how they have leveraged research and insights to just stay ahead. The focus of this webinar is to uncover how organizations have leveraged voice of customers to help adapt themselves to the new normal. And I'm extremely delighted to introduce our distinguished guest speakers for today's session. We have Manoj Menon, who is the Commercial Director, World Panel Division, Qatar. Shubhadeep Banerjee, he is the Vice President, Marketing Services, Foods Division, ITC Limited. They'll have one session over here covering elements. We have Priya Lobo, CEO Ormax, and Gaurav Mehta, Chief Marketing Officer from Cardeco. They'll be talking about a few things, how they have leveraged insights. We have Abhinav Mohan, VP and GM in MobiPulse, and we have Aditi Mittal, AGM, Consumer Insights, Hindustan Times Media. They'll also be talking something about how they have leveraged insights. We have another pair, that is Sharmila Das, who is a chairwoman and founder, Purple Audacity Research and Innovation, and Ratnakar Mani, Research Lead, India, Amazon India. We have Biswa Priya Banerjee, Executive VP, Insights Division, Kantar, and Abhishek Sehgal, Head Consumer and Marketing Insights at Google. So the next slide, please. Yeah. So we start off with the first pair. Just to briefly introduce the first set of speakers, Manoj and Shubhadeep. Manoj spearheads the World Panel Division at Kantar. In his role, he is responsible for driving commercial growth and setting strategies for key accounts and ensuring client satisfaction. He's been with Kantar IMRB for nearly 25 years. We also have Shubhadeep. He spent a considerable amount of time and his experience in the areas of consumer insights and strategy, media, and consumer care. He has successfully started a function of data and analytics in the organization and online management review. The question that they will be addressing right here is, and talking a little bit more about what strategies have been adopted by an FMCG company during these pandemic phase. So all over to Manoj and Shubhadeep.
Thank you, Ashwini and Sundar. Hi, Shubhadeep, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Manoj. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Shubhadeep, thank you for taking out time for this short interactive session. Before that, first, let me congratulate you. I've seen an article a couple of days back saying that ITC Foods crossed almost 10,000 crore sales mark in full year 2020. So that's an amazing milestone. So congratulations for that. Shubhadeep, you must have heard this line, multiple times in the last 5 months, and I'm repeating the statement again. So this is an unprecedented situation for all of us. I don't think there's any single company which has not impacted due to COVID-19 pandemic. Even for ITC, probably it was a mixed bag of some categories relatively doing better than the rest during the lockdown period. So the reason I put this, to word cloud to emphasize the fact that how consumers have changed in terms of their buying behavior so fast from the perceptions of quality, price. They are still important, no doubts about that. But there are new paradigms that are emerging, such as safety, hygiene, fear, etc. So these are the kind of new normal that we need to get used to. Even from World Panel data, we have seen a lot of randomness in the way consumers buying FMCG. Consumers picked up a lot more, hygiene and health product categories during the lockdown period after the pandemic started. A lot more snacking products as well, interestingly, because all of them were at home and quite a lot of people are still working from home, and that really accentuated the snacking habits at home. Consumers, made less number of shopping trips, but more number of categories during a single trip, with an intention of going to retail stores less often. And this is completely an opposite of what we've seen in the past, where consumers were making more number of shopping trips earlier in the 2019. Now, when it comes to foods, we saw a movement from unbranded to branded, but sticking to the higher penetration packs, or in some categories even they moved to small packs to manage the budget. So these are some of the interesting behavioral changes that we have seen from the World Panel data. Now, I want to pick your brain, Shubhadeep, to understand how you have used research during these COVID times, and what actions have you taken using the research insights. You can answer them from your experience and the challenges that you have faced. And I'm sure coming from ITC, it will be immensely helpful to the research fraternity and also to the other marketers as well who are on this call. Over to you, sir, Shubhadeep.
Big words, Manoj. I will just tell you how we experienced the last 4 months. I think it's an unprecedented, unfortunate situation, but I think it's a golden era as far as people in consumer insights are concerned. I think we would not. It's a once in a lifetime situation. We had been inundated with information, and I'm not saying just data. Inundated with information at this point in time, and at the same point in time, we were also scared with the kind of data that was coming. Because it was black swan, right? We did not know exactly what to fall back on. We had no precedence to figure out hence what. What does this mean? Is it a data error, or is it really? So the entire issue of what is an outlier versus the entire habit of looking at data with some incrementality shifts here and there. While that was happening, and you guys were our eyes and ears, everybody, and when I say you, it's not only Kantar, but everybody in the industry who provided lots of information at this point in time, and beyond the market research and beyond the known market research organizations, many of them came up with a lot of information, and lots of webinars were also happening at that early stage of the lockdown. This all led to us trying to distill, because as I said, we were inundated with information at that point in time, and it was important to kind of move the shaft from the grain and try and understand what to pick up as a marketeer or as a brand owner, and what to run with and what to avoid right now. Some of the big ones, and at that time we said that let's not worry about what is going to be a long-term effect. Let's look at short and mid-term, and we will try and understand long-term over time, and hence decide on what all actions are going to continue with us for a longer period of time. So an aspirational and experiential economy moved towards an anxiety and a frugal set of people, or a mindset. We went towards we observed that consumers are moving towards the factor of trust in a bigger way, and one of those was, of course, defined by quality. So the law of double jeopardy, which we have read now for enough and spoken about a number of times, we found that play out not only now. In fact, we saw that playing out just before the COVID hit, because India did not come into COVID with a very buoyant situation. Especially in FMCG, we saw the rate of growth had fallen significantly, and rural actually had fallen significantly. And in the same rural, now we are saying it's going to help us tide over the difficult situation more than an urban market. So I'm saying that so trust became big. Double jeopardy started playing out in a bigger way. Initial days, no, because availability and all that was more important. Whatever was available was selling. So that was, so at ITC, if I say a few things, how we took it forward. So from, let's say, immunity was becoming big, although the search trend, if you now see, and I think the our friend from Google will talk about how the immunity trend is now actually not really going up the way it was. In fact, the recent past shows a decline. So we tied up, we created immunity juice. We had a medical clinical trials on that. We tied up with a partner called Amway, took it forward. We brought haldi in doodh, and we said, okay, that's an immunity booster. So all those, now today we recently launched immuno in confectionery as well, to say. So it is almost like becoming a table stake in the category. So there has been a shift in priority on health. So while we saw people walking the talk in terms of consuming less sugar, less fat, more fiber, etc., it took a little bit of backseat, and people started looking towards high immunity or immunity booster products. So we started a play there. We saw a huge increase in recipe searches, and that we played up. We had lots of content on digital that we took up around recipes, both Ashirvad, Dark Fantasy. In fact, we took it a step beyond. We tied up with players like Frozen Bottle and created Dark Fantasy frozen bottle products and took it up through Swiggy, and it was available for people to pick it up. We saw fresh content was missing on television, and people were really moving back to nostalgic content like Mahabharata and Ramayana and movies. And so we also, I think most of us would have seen a trend called brands as publishers. So brands are trying to create content, and we created, I think, world's largest content called 5-Star Kitchen, and that was a content that was in sync with multiple trends that you guys told us. You talked about lack of fresh content, you talked about recipes going up, and of course being relevant is important, and Kantar was shouting loud, and everybody, and we all know that's important for our brands to stay relevant. So we created content. It was a 22-minute capsule over 12 weekends, and across all 33 channels of Star and Hotstar, that content got aired. Our brands got integrated into it. It did very well for all our brands. It showcased how our brands can be used in the food and beverage space to create interesting cuisines and dishes. Our own 5-star chefs from our hotels were the guys who did that content. So ITC enjoys this advantage of having diversified into so many spaces. We created an ecosystem, and you would have seen we partnering players like Domino's, partnering players like Swiggy, Zomato, Domino's, Dunzo's to take our brands to as many possible channels and players to consumers. We started our own D2C, and we know that brand.coms have played a big role, and e-commerce, we have heard how it has gone through the roof, and we have Ratnakar to talk about a little more, I'm sure, on that. So we took ITC store on wheels to societies. Today we have covered more than 1,500 or I think around 1,800 odd societies, where we have taken the full range of ITC products to the societies and this was both to tell people that don't worry, stay at home, we will be there at your doorstep, but also to take not only the essentials, and in the initial days staples form 60% of the purchase baskets, but today it is only less than 20%, and that became a great pulse for us to understand how the definition of what is essential changed from April to a July or an August now, right? What was only atta and salt and spices as essentials, today I think we are looking for beyond that to make life a little more normal to what was in the past. I don't know how much of that is going to come back. ITC also is on the verge of starting its direct-to-consumer channel called itcstore.in, which is also an initiative to create another channel of connecting with the consumers. While we did that, it was important for us to have content which is relevant. So, for example, Mom's Magic, we felt through a lot of consumer research, and Sharmila did a very lovely piece for us, and many others, and I'm referring to all these research pieces, and it told us that women, while there was ungendering which was playing up as a trend, and it is good that men also started doing a lot more than they were doing in the past at home. But we were also seeing that the women in the house were getting extremely stressed. There needs to be an avenue for them to take that out, avenue to not only get entertained but also get educated on certain fronts. And we started something saluting their role that they are playing today, saying hashtag stay strong moms, and we took it onto our brand pack like Mom's Magic. We created a series of events on social media, on Facebook and Instagram, went live with them, not only on things like music and singing, but interacting or giving them avenue to interact with experts on the subject of psychology, parenting, and stuff like that.
Sorry, just a time check.
Yeah.
Just a time check. We have.
Time check. I'll just take another 30 seconds out, Manoj, on that, and say, sure, while all that happened, I think consumer insighting will probably have evolved significantly today. All the DIs and group discussions are happening where we're connecting on Zoom and doing that, or on Teams and doing it. But the role of first-party, third-party data and connecting it with places like a chatbot or a marketplace that Kantar has, and others like Ipsos also has some tools and techniques. I think those will play a very, very big role to drive new consumer insights going forward. My pet topic on a common currency on media will be an ask, and I think more than ever before. So I think these need to play out, Manoj, to help build more consumer insights and better consumer insights and more agile consumer insights going forward.
That's very interesting, Shobdeep. I understand these are tougher times, but happy to see that you kind of managed to take some quick actions, and I'm sure it'll result in better sales growth as well. Unfortunately, I need to break this at this point in time, purely for the sake of time. So thank you very much for taking out time for this session. I really enjoyed listening to you, and I'm sure the audience must have felt the same. Thank you. Stay safe. Take care.
You too.
Over to you, Sundarashni.
Yeah, thank you, Manoj. Thank you, Shubhadeep, for sharing your views and thoughts. Our next speaker, let me quickly introduce Priya and Gaurav. Priya is the CEO of Ormax, and she spent about 25 years in the art of understanding consumers, and she's an expert. She's a mom and kids expert. We have Gaurav Mehta, who's Chief Marketing Officer of Cardeco. He was formerly a CMO of South Asia and General Manager of OLX Pakistan, where he drove the brand as one of the most admired brand there. The key question for them, or they're planning to address over here, is why do brands need to get it right in this new normal? So all over to Priya and Gaurav.
Thanks, Ashwini. I think getting it right is on everybody's mind. And I want to say that in the last 2 to 3 weeks, we have tested actually 11 to 12, 13 script ideas, different geographies to just get this right. And I want to say that both Gaurav and I had just one thought in mind, that I think the creative agency partners need the support the most. We were sure that we were going to go to the drawing board, correct? But when we go to the drawing board, what are the creative inputs that we need to get right? And I think the creative agency partners needed it the most. I have 2 points that I want to talk about. Is that for brands to stay relevant, I think today most important is to understand the emotional and psychological headspace of the consumer. We've all been talking about the COVID mindset, and the important thought is that today I realized that when we were talking of recovery, today the key word or phrase that I want to leave you behind is that we are living with the crisis. And when we talk about living with the crisis, I think it's talking about coping. And when we cope, I think the most important word that brands need to understand, and I've been discussing with Gaurav, is the language of resilience. And resilience actually means that we want to bounce back and leap back into action from the adversity that we have been facing. And what does that mean for Cardeco? There are 2 words, soothe and safety. And when we say soothe, we're looking at a very comforting, empathetic conversation that a brand needs to have with us, that they get us, they understand us. And when I look at some form of communication from them, I know that they are in this mode of caring, compassionate mode. But the important point was safety and the psychological perspective on safety, because that's a difficult one to get, right? Especially in the business that Gaurav is, it's about automobiles and Gadi. And we know that the deepest impact in our lives has been on movement. Some of us have grieved over the loss of movement. So what does safety mean in the context of Cardeco? And how do we kind of show safety to the consumer? And that was very, very important, because we are looking at helping the consumer from a state of anxiety and helplessness. And with Cardeco, moving them to a state where they understand that Cardeco can help them. And that was very, very important when we were looking at all these ideas and scripts. But the moment of truth when we were doing this was what a consumer said. Emotionalization to theek hai. Aap hamare liye kya extra karne wale ho? And I think that's what this whole effort was, to understand the role of Cardeco. And as I always say, that we are all looking at positive messaging, right? And we all want to talk about optimism. And I've always said that optimism is a double-edged sword. And for us was to balance optimism and realism. And every time we did that, we realized that some places we got it right and some places we got it wrong. But the most important one for me was to understand, how could Cardeco deliver this optimism? And remember one thing, this balance is so difficult to achieve at this stage, because if I got the emotion right, I didn't get the realism right. And if I got both of them right, I didn't get the whole how Cardeco was going to help them navigate through these difficult times. And when I'm talking about this, and we all, the creative agency, Cardeco team, we have been very, very tuned to the fact that if Cardeco has to help the consumer move ahead during this crisis, then what is the new metaphor of Gadi that we are going to leave the consumer behind with, right? When we were pre-COVID, we said, suno sabki, suno dil ki. But what is the new narrative and metaphor for Gadi during this time? I would like Gaurav to talk about that, because I think this is a difficult business today if we want to move ahead. Over to you, Gaurav.
Thanks, Priya. Thank you. I'll just flip one slide. You could go to the next slide, please. Cool. So as everybody can see, very, very crisp points. I think it's 1 and 1, but then that's okay. These are 2 crisp points that I would like to speak about. And Being in the automobile industry, which is a very high involvement decision, not just because of the money that's involved, but also how long you'll be using it, the impact that it has on your own social persona. How do your friends, your family, your relatives, everybody perceives you? And until about pre-COVID, it had a certain story attached to it. There was a lot of there's a lot of self attached to it. There's a lot of individualism attached to owning or buying a car. That, hey, you know what, I'm progressing forward in life. So from a sedan, I'm going towards a luxury sedan, and so on and so forth. So there was a lot of achievement attached to buying a car. But I think if history has taught us something, that whenever there's a macro event, it changes us as a human race. The behavior just changes totally, not just in micro cohorts or in certain countries, across the world. And before I actually talk about what we did, let me just like bring a point. I mean, when 2008 subprime crisis had happened, post that, the household saving percentage across the world was at its highest since the 1929 depression. It was almost 80 years that particular saving percentage as a part of like your income that was breached after a big event of that magnitude had happened. So pandemic is nothing else but another event that has impacted the whole human race in its totality. And all of us are feeling certain things which are universal across the world in varying degrees, but the feeling is the same. So now when I overlay that whole feeling that Priya also spoke about like the feeling of safety, security, the mistrust that's there, it's not only in certain geographies, it's across the world. But how did we actually look at it and say, you know what, we need to course correct? Just before the pandemic, mid-March, we were supposed to go live with a campaign, which was again working on the codes of individualism, achievement, upgrade, moving ahead in life, because we've achieved something in terms of material distinction, or maybe got married and so on and so forth. Post COVID, we understood that that's not the way people would be wanting to get a message, or the behavior, or the receiving mindset had totally changed, which is when we started to understand the consumer behavior a lot more. And the biggest distinction that I think we saw during research through our old social media listing was that the me became we. People understood that the self or the individual can't really make a lot happen, and whatever is going to happen in terms of car buying or even car selling has to have a clarion call, which is more we led rather than just about me and my family. It has to be a much more broader society based impact that we were talking about. The second thing, what the aspiration bit about selling a car when you're getting promoted just went out of the window. It was all about, hey, you know what, we know we are in a tough spot, but the fear gave way to resilience also at some point of time. Yeah, we all have learned how to live with COVID in the past 3-4 months. The first 1 or 2 months was a lot of fear psychosis. The next 2-3 months have been more about resilience, and you know what, we have to get on with life. So how does the car selling bit become a part of that whole story? Is what we discovered, what people were responding to. The whole impact on mobility was born out of fear, but it became the practically logical thought process that, you know, if I were to like take a metro or a bus or like an Uber or an Ola, there are higher chances of me getting infected with COVID. So why don't I make a much more rational decision and think about owning a car? And so car, which was a status symbol, an achievement marker, all of a sudden became a safety and a must-have kind of a thing in your possession pyramid. I would like to draw an analogy. What mobile phones used to be about 15 odd years back, status symbol, hey, I've achieved, and which is why I have a phone. It's a must-have today to operate properly, to work properly, to study properly. I do see that the current mindset that has happened after COVID is going to make automobiles in India go towards that paradigm about it being a must-have and it being good for your own productivity. And we are seeing that on our site also. We are at the all-time highest traffic without spending a single dollar. People are coming on their own accord. Used car traffic is going up. The two-wheeler traffic is going up. The entry-level segment car traffic is going up because people who would not have bought the car earlier are looking towards buying a car because safety, security reason. And those are some of the interesting insights that we found out by trial and error and through researching. And those are some of the insights that I just thought I'll share from how people have changed and how that has impacted mobility. What hasn't changed is the people's need for mobility. But how they are mobile, how do they get from point A to point B has totally changed. So yeah, that's what we found out, and that's what I wanted to share.
Gaurav, do you think that the Gadi metaphor is going to be played out differently compared to what we were talking earlier when we were saying Chalao Apni? Is there a new thought that?
Yeah, the time check quickly. I think I'm like second-hand car selling was almost a byproduct of buying a new car. So it was a very transactional thing. But I think how people will look at the assets that they have, which is car, is going to be a little bit more layered now. Can it be used for bigger purposes? If I need to keep my family safe, will I rather take a metro or actually look at this car as a bubble, a micro bubble for my family also? So there's a lot of family element and safety security which is going to get into second-hand car ecosystem, and which will impact Gadi also, the way we project ourselves.
Lovely. Thank you. And thank you, Ashwini and Sundar. Yeah.
Thanks, Priya and Gaurav. Thanks for sharing your perspectives on mobility and the associations that consumers like you and I have on how that need will get fulfilled, and to kind of get that associations right as a brand. Sandeep, if you could hit the next slide. Let's invite Abhinav and Aditi to share their experiences on understanding some of the dichotomy I'm sure that would have existed between a print version and an online version of sharing news and information. Who better than Aditi to kind of tell us what happened, and who better than Abhinav to tell us how research played a role? So over to you guys.
Thanks, Ashwini and Sundar, for that introduction.
Hi, thanks, Ashwini and Sundar. Aditi.
Welcome
Cool.
aboard.
So, Aditi,
Abhinav, over to you.
Thank you. So Aditi and I are going to talk about how we partnered up to adopt new methodologies for both the offline as well as the online channels over the last few months. So Aditi, we've now been working for almost 2 years, and HT Media has been running multiple tracks for all of these 3 digital properties within MobiPulse, right? Now, starting March, the external environment changed drastically. Honestly speaking, I expected you guys to pause the track and wait for things to settle down. We've seen a lot of brands actually do that. However, you decided to not just continue the track, but actually enhance it to gain insights very specific to the external conditions. Now, I'm sure obviously us being mobile first helped in that decision, but could you talk a little bit about some of the key changes in consumer behavior that you saw for your category specifically, and how the category consumption and the brand perception changed during this time period?
Yeah, honestly, Abhinav, this is the early trends we were picking up from China and West in the months of late Jan, February, March. We were sure that situation is not going to ebb anytime soon. And we at HT were like very clear. There was no question of not continuing to talk to our readers, right? On one hand, our newspapers were unable to reach their household, and on the other hand, we sort of expected a surge in digital. So therefore, we surely wanted to be in touch to see how their behaviors are shifting. Very, very important for us from both the lens, from print as well as digital lens. So brief to us was very, very clear, limited budgets, but figure out a way. And as far as on the category trends, what you was talking about, see, as far as digital is concerned, during lockdown, the extent of interaction with the category deepened significantly. You could look at some numbers here on the slide, multiple times a day, regular visits, particular genres of news got picked up, especially. This has also resulted in shaping certain brand perceptions, leadership, credibility, and credibility during these times. Becomes very important that way. Um, you can also see how this has resulted for us. I mean, you could look at our digital numbers of reference com score. We have exploded that way. So we were very clear. I mean, we have to do this.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, that's very interesting. And obviously, with the surge in the number of users coming to your online platform, it makes complete sense for you to sort of double down on insights to capitalize on that growth, right? But let's talk about the print newspaper business. The situation there was very, very different, right? I mean, print, if I'm correct, print typically is the largest contributor for revenue for media houses, and I'm sure HT Media is no different that way. And from what I understand, the circulation of newspaper was massively hit in the last few months. I even remember that there were these rumors floating around of whether newspapers can spread the virus or not, and most newspaper agencies, including HT, also did a massive campaign around sort of educating users in general. So in that situation, obviously marketing budgets are hit, and especially research budgets are typically the first to go when your overall revenue is down. Plus, you guys are also running your tracks offline, right? So what made you guys decide to sort of not just continue with research, but actually shift from offline to mobile, which is a massive shift?
So first thing first, let me just put it on record. Newspapers are completely safe for everybody. But yes, as I said, there was no question of not continuing, Abhinav. Offline research we knew was not possible given the crisis, but we already had enough experience of running. Running a good track with InMobi and some other digital partners also, and we have been doing it for our digital platform. All we had to do is to just pivot ourselves and move our offline work quickly to online. That's all it took us. Yes, it was definitely an interesting journey for us to convert from offline to mobile research. Perhaps, Abhinav, you could talk a little about how you ensured that we are covering the core business requirements that offline covered within the limitation of a mobile platform, programmatic platform.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I mean, shifting from offline to online or, mobile in our case, is definitely not the easiest task to undertake. But, honestly, Aditi, as you know, I think it's not as daunting as a lot of brands think, right? So, obviously, the fact that HT Media was already working with us on the mobile side made a huge difference because, you guys could sort of understand the advantages of an agile mobile methodology. But we obviously started off looking at the questionnaire, first of all, looking at the business objectives and then looking at the questionnaire and understanding how it can be adapted to the mobile environment. Now, one very, very interesting question was how do you validate whether a user who is claiming to read Hindustan Times actually does read Hindustan Times, right? So even on the online methodology, we introduced a masthead within the questionnaire, almost sort of acting as a surrogate for to pantry check. We obviously also reduced the questionnaire length, not just in terms of format, looking at character limits or number of options and stuff like that, but we could also sort of get real-time location signals, handset signals, etc. So leveraging some of these passive data points to reduce questionnaire also sort of helped us from a technology perspective to shift from offline to online. But that's mostly on the technology side, Aditi. What I've always heard is that one of the key concerns that brands typically have with transitioning to mobile or even online for that matter is the fact that the scores will move drastically, right? You're moving from one mode to the other. You already have a set of scores defined, and they will change completely. So wanted to sort of understand, what was your observation and how did you guys solve for that?
See, it's given the overall scores will move with the change in research methodologies. But what we have to be conscious about is that relative scores remain more or less stable, right? Between brands, score will not change so much. And overall score shift also happens because when we change methodologies, what we end up doing is we actually change the audience mix, the people you are talking to. And if one is conscious about what is this change in audience mix, then this is not really worrying. So, for example, when you are in an online methodology mode, you will have a bit of upper NCCS then versus a lower NCCS. You could benchmark your score from offline within that cut and see if it is sitting in the same range. So you could get a little more digital savvy people because the mode of reaching out to these people is digital, right? There might be other nuances, target group nuances over here. So as long as one is conscious of this relative performance being largely stable and conscious of the audience mix change that this will bring about, I think it shouldn't be a problem for most of us to actually do some online work as far as tracking is concerned. Net, the way forward for us as HT Media is to collaborate on more mobile first solutions with you guys. Basically, plan to leverage other tech first solutions that you guys have because, I mean, that's going to be the order of the day going forward. I mean, we can't just rely on face to face methodologies. It will also shift a lot of other behaviors, not just for the consumers, for organizations like us also. So keep creating a digital environment around picking up primary research data would become really important. So we'll rely on a lot of upcoming tools and methodologies like that.
Awesome. Thanks a ton, Aditi, for that. And over to you, Ashwini and Sundar.
Thanks, Ashwini. Thanks, Abhinav.
Thank you, Abhinav and Aditi, for sharing your views. Bringing in our next speaker, Sharmila and Ratankar. Sharmila is chairwoman and founder director at Purple Odyssey. She has been a qualitative, quantitative researcher and chose to further expertise in qual. And Ratankar is a research lead at Amazon. He's been with Amazon for over 4 years now. The big question that the pair will walk us through is how do you ensure keep a pulse check on the evolving consumer needs in this new normal? So all over to Sharmila and Ratankar.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Sundar.
And good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, the theme Sharmila and I are going to cover is why we need MR more now than ever. And let me go off video so I'm not hogging bandwidth of all the attendees. Yeah. I'm not able to move the slide. If somebody could move. Yeah. And the next. Next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. We have all seen how marketing and advertising industry in general has embraced digital in the last 8 to 10 years. So much so that even the government has been pushing for digital initiatives. In the MR industry, we did change. We did adopt tablets as compared to paper and pen data collection methodology that we had earlier. And then there have been experiments in pockets to leverage digital and create scalable solutions, but we haven't seen much yet so far. So let's be vocally self-critical and evaluate if we have really embraced digital in the MR. Now, thinking back on the lockdown itself, how it sort of suddenly required us to take all the face-to-face fieldwork off, and it hit MR industry really hard. It disrupted much of the inciting work that we were doing in Amazon since, let's say, mid-March to mid-April, and we quickly pivoted to initiate some of the trackers, qual plus quant trackers, to understand what this disruption is bringing about in customers' behavior and attitude. We created newsletters that we shared with leadership, compiling information from a lot of syndicated studies that our partners were doing, including some of the work that we ourselves initiated, because it was time when we wanted to have a close check on customer pulse. Moving on to the next page. Yeah, even during these short 5 months since mid-March, customers have adopted and changed behavior pattern multiple times. And Manoj and Subhadip sort of touched upon about this earlier. Due to the sudden lockdown, there was a demand supply shock, right? And leading to hoarding and scarcity. We would all remember the empty shelves in supermarkets in the initial couple of months after the lockdown got announced, right? And what it forced customers to do is trade-off choices. Given that their favorite brand, their most used brands were not available on the shelf, they tried many other brands as well. And this opened up opportunities for many brands, but at the same time, it also opened up loyal customer bases of specific brands to competition. Even as we would all have made changes, adjustments to adapt to the work from home environment, and not just for ourselves, but for the people we live with, right? There were new needs. Yeah, there were new needs that we realized when we started working from home. We all needed earphones to take calls. We needed better Wi-Fi routers, probably. We needed chairs and tables, right? So there were changes that we made in our own habits as well. And Manoj spoke in detail about how category behavior sort of shifted even through these last 5 months. Think of places customers would usually purchase from. Given the new world order of social distancing and safety concerns, it will also impact where customers choose to buy from. In terms of, it's not hard to imagine how loss of income and economic uncertainty will make value and affordability more pronounced. And speakers before me spoke about it. But the implication of that is we have to rethink the fundamental 4 Ps of marketing. And while we may be thinking about short term, let's say 1 to 2 years, but at the same time, we'll also have to watch out for durable and permanent shift in customer needs and behaviors that COVID would have brought about, right? And we again heard from multiple speakers how new growth opportunities are emerging and how brands will need to be agile to invest behind the right growth opportunities, right? And in such a situation, role of customer insights, especially for folks on the business side, is now more critical than ever. And we just can't do this without support of our agency partners. So in this light, I'll hand it over to for specifically talking about some of the work we did with our partners during this period.
Thank you, Ratnakar. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So we are talking about how the research partners actually responded to this call from the client, and the single word that actually explains it is harmony. So therefore, in my earlier or my previous webinar also, I had referred to logically woke qualitative as the way forward for qualitative research, and that's what we adapted. So we understood the kind of digital platforms that the consumers were already familiar with, and we use those to answer the questions of our clients. So during this period, the last 5 months, we have done all sorts of studies for Amazon. So right from exploratory to UI UX to diagnostic to pre-testing kind of studies, everything has been done. And in addition to that, what we have done is the next slide, please. A passing reference actually during one of the conversations with Amazon resulted in our colossal longitudinal study. And thank you so much, Shubhadev, for referring to our study during your session also. This longitudinal study was qualitative in nature. It covered around 150 customers across different generations. So the yuppie generation Z versus the baby boomer, the empty nester who is living alone versus the families with older children, younger children. So all sorts of target groups were actually part of this study, and they stayed with us for 3 months through the lockdown and through unlock. Okay, the key pillars of, or the key 3 principles which govern this study were relevance, timely reporting, and actionability. Relevance is something which my colleagues have already referred to, but then that was one of the core, principles that we were following in our study, because the data needed to be useful to our clients. So that is the reason why the study encompassed all generations. Now, pointing at shifts is useless unless they are reported on time for our clients to take action. So the 4 reports which were shared with the client, every report got shared within 10 days of pre-work completion. And last but not the least, actionability was our primary focus, and we did, take a punt in sharing our recommendations with all our clients too. For example, if we go to the next slide, that is just one example of what we actually alerted our clients for. And, all of you have heard how the consumer is showing spikes in their behavior, and certain things which were not normal earlier are now being shown in their purchase behavior. Our understanding from the study was that that is because the consumer is constantly moving like a pendulum due to all the paradoxes which are happening in their life. So therefore, the same consumer who sits and tells you that, listen, everything has to be for my family because this is the first time in my life that I've spent so much time with my family. So every purchase decision is going to be my family. In the next moment, the same consumer will come and tell you that I am now so tired of being with my family all the time. So therefore, I think it is time for me to actually satisfy my own self and make myself happy by spending on me. So same for safety versus financial needs, safety versus convenience, and these paradoxes are panning across all generations. It is important for our clients to actually be aware of the entire, the minefield which they are currently facing, and therefore prepare their strategies for future based on the reality that we are facing today. So over to you, Ratnakar, for this is something which we have done so far, but what about the future and what is your perspective on that?
Just a quick
Thank you, Sharmila. Let's just move to the next slide. I'll wrap up in 30 seconds. Yeah. Thanks, Sharmila. I think you called out the how we overcome the barriers on the qual side of things. I think it's important that we lay out the challenge upfront. Sorry, I think we are on the wrong side, but that's fine. Considering the safety challenges and the opportunity. So Sharmila spoke about how we overcome some of the challenges that exist on the qual side of things. Considering the safety concern of respondents and the interviewers, there is no certainty when we'll start feeling confident about getting back to face-to-face data collection, and especially on the quantitative side. And let's acknowledge that face-to-face operations is not easy. We have sort of perfected it over years, but it's not available. It's not going to be available in the near future, and therefore it presents an opportunity to represent the voices of customers of specific cohorts that we'll miss, which currently online does not cover well. If we think of customer cohorts like homemakers, students, lower NCCS, town classes, we can't lose voices of these customers in our business decisions as we think about taking forward things with agility. And hence, I reckon this is a challenge, but at the same time, it's also a very rewarding opportunity to invent our way out of this situation. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Ratnakar and Sharmila for sharing, the context of how MR is filling the gaps of knowledge and information that Amazon required. And that's a consistent thread that we've heard from some of our, speakers earlier in the session today. If we hit the next slide, please, Sandeep. Let's ask, two experienced minds from our industry. Let me quickly introduce both of them. Biswa, a dear colleague from Kantar, is an electronics engineer with management education, over 2 decades of experience in research, B2B sales and marketing, leads the tech research practice for Kantar South Asia. He's quite an expert cutting across areas like technology, education, healthcare, lifestyle, entertainment, community, rural upliftment, digital divide, business delivery. This, oh my God, I mean, there's a lot we can spend time over a beer on. And Abhishek, welcome again. Abhishek leads consumer and market insights for Google India. Loves to use research to solve business problems, hence finds himself decoding users in a coding company. Well, okay, that's interesting. Worked with leading research agencies as well as outside India. Formerly, Abhishek was with Coca-Cola and J&J Consumer as head of insights. So welcome both of you. Tell us how Kantar and Google have been able to provide insights to business stakeholders despite the current crisis. Over to both of you.
Hey, Sundar, just a quick one. Thanks for the introduction. I'm just cognizant of the time here. How are we doing on time? Are we extending it or?
Stick to your script is what I would suggest. And thanks for bringing that up, Abhishek. So I will request our participants to stay online. This should take no more than 10 minutes overall from now. Thanks for being patient with us. And thanks, Abhishek and Biswa, for being patient and holding on till your session time came up. Back to you, Abhishek.
Thanks, Sundar. So firstly, a great pleasure to be here on this platform to share our learnings of the partnership that we have. All the speakers have spoken about the fact that the last few months have been trying for all kinds of businesses, whether it's the agencies or our clients. I think what we want to talk about today is how we have seen this as an opportunity to build a very strong relationship between Kantar and Google, an opportunity to actually bring insights in the forefront of how things happen at Google, and to help the Googlers make informed decisions. Through the last few months, Kantar and Google CMI in particular worked as a single team with a single-minded focus of addressing the questions of the stakeholders and to help them drive their business goals. We were focused on not methodologies and functions, but on business questions and manner in which we can address them in the most efficient manner. We innovated along the way, we took risks, we explored several unexplored territories to finally reach where we have. Can you help me move to the next slide, please? I'm not able to move. Thanks. So what we'll share with you today is the learning that we have during this period across the partnership that we have had. We have broadly classified these learnings into 3 meta themes: being bold, connecting the dots, and believing in yourself. And we will talk about these 3 themes today. I'm happy to introduce you to Abhishek Sahgal, who heads CMI at Google. So Abhishek, it's been a very different kind of a year for Google than in previous years. So in this scenario, how has your priorities changed? And how do you align to these big themes that we believed in throughout the journey that we had together? Abhishek, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Viswa. No, I think these are completely unprecedented and extraordinary times. And for us here in Google also, priorities changed quite significantly just at the start of the COVID crisis in India. I think our biggest focus area at that point in time was to give credible, accurate information to help our users who depend heavily on Google search and other platforms. So I think the initial period was really doing a lot of hard work to put all that credible information on our platforms. And as we progressed through the journey, you could see many collaboration with governments to put credible website linkages, and later on even shelters, testing centers also popping up on maps. So that was the initial part of the journey, and that continues to be a big focus area for us. And the second big pillar is obviously around how do we help our advertisers, our clients on the latest insight and telling them what is happening. So I mean, just from a changing consumer landscape, what we've seen here in India is that I think the digital adoption has accelerated many folds. And my own sense on the future outlook is that many offline behaviors have shifted to online, but I think only those areas, only those behaviors will stick where the user experience is going to be good online. I think after the crisis is over, and we all hope that it's behind us. Areas where the user experience is not that great, people and consumers will go back to the old behaviors, and that's something which we should all keep in mind from a digital product and service perspective. Therefore, I mean, big shifts that we are seeing, and there are papers and articles being written that by how many years the digital adoption journey has been accelerated in India. Some people say 3-4 years. Kind of milestone has been breached in last 3-4 months. But education has been a big barrier, and it's a positive thing that has shifted to online. Media and entertainment is another big one, and the third one is gaming. Again, given the times we are living in. So let me just maybe talk through point number 2, where this thing about stitching a story by connecting the dots. So I spoke about some of the user trends. I think the other big need where we collaborate with a lot of agency partners like Kantar and others, we work with most of the leading agencies in the country, was to bring latest insights to our consumers. And when we had to go back to our clients to tell them what is it that we are seeing, both from our own trend data plus any other research from a consumer standpoint, I mean, there was a temptation to again get onto a call with Kantar or any other agency and write a brief, invent a new research, compile the findings, and go back. And those are bad habits that you build over time. But I think what we did was, Kantar and us, we connected. There was a very consultative approach, and staying away from not doing a study altogether. Rather, we had planned a client specific webinar on latest insight, where we thought that we'll combine Google search trend data with some of the syndicated work that Kantar was doing, and we also clubbed many other studies in that piece of work. And what it did was, not only did it bring out many insights that our previous speakers have also talked about, in a very timely manner, but also I think it was a very consultative, focused, and sharp outcome we saw, and we were able to take back to our clients. So that's one big thing. The other thing, and I was very interested in what Ratnakar was also speaking about, and I think he was alluding to the fact that face-to-face is something that is not working right now, will not work, and this is the time for us to be bold. I think what I have seen in the last couple of months is that agency partners have really shown the kind of flexibility in moving methodologies, because face-to-face came to a standstill. But I think we can do more. And one of the ideas which we as research fraternity should really bank on is the fact that in India, we have almost 500 million consumers before COVID who are online. And most of that access to online happens through smartphone. So any new solution that we are thinking about, whether it's programmatic, which InMobi is a leader, or any other new research methodology, it has to be mobile first. And that's something which we have to keep in mind. India, time again, proves to be a market which behaves differently. Many a times, copy-paste solutions from other markets do not work, and that's something that we have to keep in mind. And if we have mobile-first approach in designing solutions for future, I think we'll be in a good space. And the third thing is really about believing in yourself. And this is something which we as research fraternity have to think about deeply. At least in Google, what my team and we've done is that we have started focusing a lot on existing databases, past studies, to really do deep insighting work and come up with new perspectives, new point of view, and take it back to our clients and internal stakeholders. What is that latest insight which we can still mine through? And these are some of the studies which in normal times are regular rushed lives we would have never seen and referred to. So I think my message to some of the whether you happen to be on the client side or research side, I think take a pause, look at the immense rich data you already have, and maybe look at it with a fresh lens and go back to your teams and do that value add. I think it's a good time to do that. And maybe the last thing, and I'll close with that, is this is an unprecedented crisis. Not many people on this call will be old as me or Biswa. We've seen 2008 crisis as well. Maybe this is much bigger than that. But I think we need to be resilient, and these times will pass. We have to be patient, and we are all dabbling with very untested, unprecedented task of balancing work life and personal lives as well. So maybe time to take a pause, invest in our well-beings as well. There would be some days where we'll do good at work, few days where we'll not be that productive, not that efficient, and that's okay. I think we need to be slightly good for ourselves and take it easy. So that's broadly the message I would like to give, and hand it over to Biswa for closing.
Thanks, Abhishek. Yeah, and you've been right in saying that these are tough times, but we will pass these as well. And I think to close, I'd just like to leave you with one thought, that while these are difficult times for all of us, whether it's the clients or the research organizations, this is also the time for all of us to build partnerships, to build relationships. This is the time where we actually dig deeper with our clients based on the work that we do. And the fundamentals are therefore very important for us to look at, because you really don't know where we are going otherwise. If you've been able to do that and stay together during these tough times and build real insights for the client organizations, you will be able to cement this as a long haul relationship as well. So that's the message and the thought that we wanted to leave you all with. Thanks a lot. Over to you, Sundar.
Thanks a lot, Abhishek and Biswa, for sharing your views. I think we have a lot of questions that have poured in, but due to the paucity of time, we may not be able to take the questions today. But we will share the questions to all our distinguished speakers. But before closing in, thank you all our distinguished speakers for today. It really was extremely helpful. Just a quick takeaway from Sandeep, the next slide, please. Yeah, a quick takeaway, just key points. Both agencies and clients must be very willing to break barriers. We must adapt and innovate and look in new ways and new approaches to get information. One must be competitive in any landscape. So every crisis is an opportunity. Consumer voice is vital. It's the leading light to shape brand experience, and must leverage the basic human truths to drive behavior. With this, before we sign off, just one quick point for the upcoming webinar on the next slide. We have the webinar on the 19th of August. It's on application of artificial intelligence to understand consumers, a media example. So please do register. Thank you very much for all your time, and thank you for your patience. Good day, and thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks to all our panelists. Thanks a lot. Good day, good evening.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.